Hi, everyone, and welcome to Presently Aqui with Claudia. I am Claudia, your host. And Presently Aqui is a community of healers from around the world coming together to share their path to self discovery and self healing and hopes to empower others and the listeners to find their way back home to their hearts. And today I have an amazing guest, and I'm so excited to introduce you all to Brett Hill. Um, this person has changed my life personally. So I'm truly excited to have him. So that allow me to introduce you. Brett's true passion through time was not only his inner work, but also teaching mindfulness and meditation in many forms. He studied Hakomi, a mindfulness-based somatic psychology with founder Ron Kurtz, and trained in group leadership under the guidance of Amina Nolan, creator of Matrix Leadership. In addition, he taught beginning and advanced meditation for several years at the Lotus Center in Oklahoma City, and established the Quest Institute Meditation Center in Dallas. He is the founder of the Mindful Coach Association and the host of two podcasts, The Mindful Coach and The Connected Conversation. He also teaches the Mindful Coach method to help coaches become more mindful and present in their sessions. Welcome, Brad.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy to host you. Brett had hosted me on his podcast, and Brett has the Mindful Association, which is remarkable because we meet every 2 weeks and we come together and have the most dynamic conversations as a whole group and in like tiny little groups. And so that's been just amazing, and we'll talk about that throughout this conversation as well. But Brett has been so generous to offer us a 5 minute meditation to walk us into our conversation.
So just take a breath and begin to turn your attention inside. So this is just a transition time, a way we can honor the fact that it takes our nervous system's time to change our focus and change our state. Just take a breath and turn your attention inward and just notice what's it like right now for you to be you. Maybe that's busy, and that's okay. Maybe it's fabulous. That's great too. Just whatever is so. Noticing any sensations that you have. And just any thoughts that are coming, just notice, oh yeah, I've got a lot to do. I've got a lot on my mind. Pressing pause on your day, on your stream of events in your life, just for a little while, so you can attend to what's happening now. Taking a deep breath and just relaxing. Continuing to just notice the flow of events, the flow of consciousness. And just saying yes to all these experiences. Yes, that's true. I'm having those thoughts. I'm having these feelings. I have this sensation. Just noticing and naming. Such an amazing skill to notice and name. I'm going to invite you to think this word, whatever it means to you, and that's the word center. Find some way it might feel like center to you. And whatever that means, breathe into that sensation. For me, there's a heartfelt, an emergence of a heartfelt sensation. My heart begins to become into my senses. And take another breath and let that be a little more present. Whatever center means to you. Whatever it feels like. And keeping a bit of this sensation, begin to organize, begin to think about coming back to the presentation, the podcast, the show, with a more open-eyed awareness or a less internal focus. And when you're ready and in your own way and in your own time, come back to engage your outer world as well as your inner world, and bringing a sense of this center with you into the very next thing that you do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Brett. I appreciate when a guest can bring in meditation, because my common thing on every podcast is I get so excited. It makes me nervous, even though I'm not. But because the excitement is overwhelming, I get nervous. And then once the meditation kicks in, as you know, soothing and calm. So thank you again. I'm really excited for today's conversation. And so let's get in. Brett, what were some of the challenges that you faced on your path to self-discovery early on? Because I know you've been on this path for quite some time.
Well, so many. I would say a big part of it is the culture that we're in now. Like you hear the word mindfulness. Excuse me just a second. When you hear the term mindfulness, it doesn't sound like something that's far-fetched, like, new agey, or
Right.
even. But when I got involved with it, it was unheard of. Mm-hmm. And so a big part of my own path in terms of obstacles was pursuing my... I guess I was driven mostly by a fascination with how does this inner world work. I really wanted to know in a detailed way, not just academically, not just someone explaining to me, but to really understand in a way that was a part of me. What capacities does this human form have, and how do I connect to the sensitivities that I have that other people may also have, but they weren't nurturing or respecting. And so on that path, I had to take a fair amount of grief for, not following the traditional sort of, get a job, find your way, get things done, particularly as a man. And I'm not trying to say women don't have this as well, but where I grew up in the Midwest in Oklahoma in the United States, which is a very, very conservative, traditional-minded place. And so sensitive men had a hard time in that world. Yeah. So those were some of my interest, but I just kept getting so much undeniable experience coming my way that it didn't really matter what other people thought. It's like, you're not having these experiences. That's fine. God bless you. I am, and this is real. And so it's necessary for me to figure this out, because this stuff is happening. I'm actually getting information from places that we don't understand, and I really need to figure this out.
Yeah, definitely. And what point there did you start to figure that aspect of yourself where you were so passionate about mindfulness? As a teenager in your college or 20s, what was that like for you?
Well, it was actually probably my early 20s, early to mid 20s when I started to break out of some preconceived notions I had about what spirituality was about that kind of had me in a little box.
Yeah.
So I was trying to understand things from a very, very small point of view. And when I finally had some insights that broke me out, and I realized that whatever, if you want to talk about God, whatever that is,
Mhm.
our human mind is never going to get it.
No, I know.
Right?
Right.
It's just never
100%.
going to get it. It's like you can't understand the notion of infinity or
Right.
eternity, or it's just it's
Yes,
incomprehensible.
it is.
And so whenever I realize that whatever is the truth, I am so far away from knowing what it really is and being able to comprehend it or think of it, that to pretend that is ridiculous. It's insanity.
It is.
And so I walked away from my beliefs that I had held for a long time.
Right.
And that opened me up to a whole world of experiences. So it was about in my mid 20s when I started to have some things happen where I started to have, you might call, psychic experiences
Yeah. Yeah.
that just made it super clear that there's something going on that in the world that I don't understand, and I need to figure this out.
Right. Right. That's truly important. And I love the truth, the vulnerability of saying that it's incomprehensible for us to even think that we can imagine what God is, or the creator, the source of it all.
Yeah,
In this limited body, impossible.
right. But what is possible?
Right.
That was the thing that kept driving me. So that's not possible. But what is possible? What can I know?
Right.
And that has been the driving force of my life
Wow.
forever. Like, what can I know?
Right.
How much of that mystery is there's a difference between understanding and experience, right? So it's like, how much of it can I experience?
Yeah.
How much of it can I know directly
Right.
without explanation necessary,
Right.
there's no understanding needed to connect to beauty, right?
Right.
You look at a mountain and you feel the awe of that mountain. You don't need to understand anything. You just need to be present for it, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that became the practice, really.
Wow, that is remarkable. And you living in the middle of the country, how were you able to create sort of a bubble for yourself, right? To be able to embark on this passion for you in a place that doesn't isn't open, and I think it still isn't, but you know.
Yeah. Well, remarkably, I sort of had a little lifeline thrown to me through a series of very strange circumstances. And I wound up studying with a very unfamous character who was more or less a guru, and one of the most beautiful men I'd ever met and have ever met. Truly, truly a heart-centered, really, really plugged into the divine in an extremely powerful way. Now, he had his problems, but I began to study his teachings. His name was Audley Allison, and he never was famous. He was never ambitious. He never did tours or had a big. There were about 150 of us or so, and here we were in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma City. And he was a tombstone carver. Strangely enough, he literally carved tombstones for a living, which was appropriate for considering who he was. And he was. In the business of business. I mean, his mission was to help people connect to what we might call the divine Christ, the mystic Christ, the heart of Christ, in a way where you really connect in a direct and powerful way. And then also there was a great deal of very complicated meditation work, energy work, that and I became a teacher in that school, and began doing that, and that's when I established the Quest Institute in Dallas and did that for a year or so before I moved on from that school to go the other direction, which is instead of flipping into the divine, I wanted to go into the body, go into the earth embodiment part. So I took off in pursuit of that knowledge as well.
Wow, that is remarkable. The people that we meet that truly help us come home to ourselves, right? Because our actions and our thoughts and our heart are asking the universe, this is where I want to be in. This is what I want to study. This is my passion. And then for the door to open, it's always these stories. That's why I'm so passionate about having people come and tell their stories, because you just don't know where the 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 hand will reach out and
Yeah.
right.
So, to add a little bit of backstory to how that worked out, I was sitting, that whole process, I met this teacher through a process that started just out of the blue. I was sitting in I had a little house. I was in Norman, Oklahoma, where I lived. And all of a sudden, for some reason, I was listening to the television, and the announcer was going, well, today in Seattle. And it's like the word Seattle just like echoed throughout the room. And I like literally like, what was that? Now, I wasn't into meditation or anything at all at that time. And I'm going, what was that? And so I just ignored it. And then, the next day, the same thing happened. Just like somebody said the word Seattle, it just like jumped. And then it started jumping. When I would read it on a page, the word would just jump at me. And I'm literally like, whoa, why is this word assaulting me? And it got so intense that I actually said, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I'm moving to Seattle. And I didn't know anybody. I had never been there. I didn't have any relatives there. I had no history. I had nothing. But I mean, it was really just, it was driving me crazy.
Right.
So I moved to Seattle, and then one thing led to another. I wound up meeting a guy who I wound up going into business with, and he funded me to open up some record stores, some used record stores, which I went back to Oklahoma City to do. I hired some people. One of them was a student of this guy, oddly, who introduced me to that. And so it was all very serendipitous that I wound up in business at the age of like 23. I had my own sub-S corporation and 5 record stores, and I had hired this guy who introduced me to a teacher that more or less, not more or less, actually opened me up to a much bigger world than I ever imagined was possible.
Right. That is remarkable. Yeah, that's because you're surrendering to what the message is coming through.
Well, it was bludgeoning me. When I teach intuition, I have to say it's so subtle. It's like a mist, shape in the mist, but this was not that. This was like a foghorn blaring in my life. So I said, stop the foghorn, okay? I guess.
Right, because now you can reflect back, now that you have all these beautiful tools, now you're looking back and saying, like, I didn't even know about intuition or any of these things. And it was just like...
Right. Yeah, this was... Yeah, exactly.
The universe was like, how do we get him to move to Seattle?
Yeah, somebody was working double time to get that to happen. Right? And it worked. It worked out really beautifully and horribly. There were some downsides to the whole thing as well, but that's the way things always go. Right. But the gifts were tremendous. And in that process of putting on these other energy fields, you get really, really opened up. And all the students became very, very, you could just say traditionally psychic. But the beautiful thing about this, and I don't know why we're talking about psychic so much on your show here today. Is that okay?
No, of course. There is no topic that we cannot discuss on here.
Well, it's unusual for me. I don't normally go there.
I do.
Well, okay. So the thing about it is, and this was the most beautiful part, one of the most beautiful parts of his teaching was he said, yeah, you're going to open up to all this world. He says, ignore it. He's completely ignore it. Don't even play around with these things. He says, because what happens is that people open up to those worlds and then they stop growing.
Huh.
He says, just ignore it and you'll go beyond,
Uh-huh.
you'll go past those levels into a whole nother level of awareness. And then when you come back to use you'll have the right relationship to those tools, and you'll see them as nothing but just sort of resources rather than identities. And like, oh, I'm Brett the psychic guy, look at these awesome powers, It's like, instead of that, it's just like, no, this is a gift of spirit, and it's just a part of who I am. It's not a flag that I wear.
Right, absolutely. I completely understand what you're saying, because while I'm listening to you, I'm like, ignore it. And I'm like, okay, let's keep going on your story. And I'm like, I understand, because when you do reach past that point, which you become the divine observer, and you do see these things as tools, and basically being a psychic is like having, as if we were spiders, right? Being a part of the web. And if we wanted to tap into the web, we could. Not to say that I'm a webmaster, like you're saying, like it's not, because, when you are, when you go that far and that deep, we all can say, if you have become the divine observer, you can say you're a psychic. You can say you're a medium.
Yeah.
You can say that you're all the clairs,
all of it, right? Yeah. It all comes as what Andrew Harvey calls them the gifts of spirit, and they are that. They just come with the territory, and so it's not like you're special because they're just part. It's just part of the territory. So, so I so appreciated that, because instead of getting all excited about, oh, look with this and that, I can tell who's calling on the phone before they know it, and it's like before all of that stuff. It's like. You don't make a show of it, and you don't really care about it, except to the degree that it serves the person or that you're dealing with, or your moment.
Right, absolutely. That is a huge part of it for people to understand that are listening in right now, because now because maybe I live in California, and there's a lot of trendy spiritualism, and that's one of them. And I think here in Los Angeles, psychic mediums are a shop. It's like a deli in New York. Like, everywhere I go, I'm like, oh, this is like the normal here, to just have that psychic, the neighborhood psychic, right?
Right.
And just go, and then people become. It does become a ceiling, whether you are the psychic or you're the person seeking the psychic, because you become codependent.
You can, yeah. You have to watch out, and because the thing that I have a problem with is whenever anybody depends on other people for special skills, right? Because you have that within.
Correct.
And so a good teacher, a good helper, a good coach is going to help you connect to your own resources rather than make you dependent on, well, I'll tell you if you'll give me another $200 and we can do a session on the thing, and we'll invite the whatever and I'll channel the whoever, and then you'll get the special knowledge that you don't have and you can't get to unless you access the gifted person.
Absolutely.
So and there's a legitimate place for that kind of thing, but I prefer to help people connect with their own inner knowing.
Absolutely.
And become the resource.
Yes. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about, getting curious with yourself, and then having this community of healers that I have on my website of everyone I've ever had. And if you resonate with anyone, reach out to them, because everyone will tell you
beautiful
exactly what you just said. That's why, with you, it's different. We created a bond months ago, but usually I pre-chat with a lot of these people, because I don't want to have fake woke spiritualists coming on here and misdirect my listeners. Right.
Oh, there's a lot of them that will happily do so. It's kind of like people will sell initiations.
Yes.
And people will say, that kind of thing. It's like,
oh my gosh.
No.
Exactly. So that's why that's my most important thing here, is just authenticity, vulnerability, and allowing the listener to understand that that's the way in to yourself. And the external is just tools, including a person that may be your guide or guru or
That's
coach.
That's
right. These are just things, because I've had psychics I've used, but I call on them to confirm what I already know, not to tell me something I don't know. Because it's me learning to exercise my own intuition and psychic abilities and be like, okay, I'm learning to trust myself more and more and more. And then I don't need to have confirmation because I've built such a deep trust with the
Beautiful.
divine in myself, right? To
Yeah.
just move forward. And that's, it's like that muscle, right? That six pack of psychicness. It's
Yeah.
I got it. I could just pull it. It's done. It's so definitely, this is important to bring up for the listener to understand that, we all have capabilities of this, the same, all the clairs, we can be in that space. But I do still very much appreciate that you brought up going beyond, because it's
Absolutely.
so divine and so important, for you to completely understand who you are, what this is for you, for no one to tell you what it is, for you to truly discover that for yourself. So I really appreciated that, for you to, and also to have the guide to tell you, like, okay, that's nice, that's cute and all,
Yeah, right. Right, exactly.
and like, let's move forward to what's really important, which is, getting to the divine observer. I have something in my eye today. I don't know what it is, and I'm trying to like have this conversation and like, you know move it
You've got
over,
something on.
whatever it
That's
is.
that's that's a tough one.
Oh goodness. But yes, I appreciate that very much. So you're in your 20s and going through these wonderful momentous experiences in your life. Where can you, like, really, besides having this beautiful person that you met to help you kind of get out of your shell and into the comfort, where did you decide, or that moment in your life that you decided to give back, to be that coach or teacher?
Well, when I was teaching meditation at the Lotus Center and at the Quest Institute, it was purely about service. So it started then, but it wasn't at all me in a way. It was just like, was in service to the people who want to be on the path, and so it wasn't like I even made a decision. It just sort of happened. Like, people just started asking me to teach them, and so that one person started, and then there was 10, and there was 100, and then there was 110, and so pretty soon I had a pretty good little group going there, and I never decided. It just sort of unfolded, and then after that, I kind of went off in a different direction, where I was always teaching and training people more in technical worlds and things. But I've always had this sense that I need to get back to doing more, helping people connect to who they really are. And since I've gone through so many fabulous learnings since then, there's like the really esoteric energy work of meditation. Then there's the really intense sort of earthbound work. I mean earthbound in the positive sense, in that kind of, like, I'm a being on the earth and I'm bound to it because I live here. And then there's, mindfulness and psychotherapy and all of that. I kind of have settled on helping people learn this one thing, and that's that you're not your thoughts. And once people, because that realization is important, is the most important thing to open up all the other doors. So that's what I call the first awakening, since we're putting these in spiritual terms. And if you don't have that, none of this other stuff matters. It all just becomes a grab bag of spiritual materialism, unless you realize that none of your thoughts are real, and that who you are is an emergent now. And whenever you really connect to that in a somatic way, a lot of your problems just kind of disappear, because everything is, and I don't mean that to be flip. I don't mean to say your cancer is going to go away, or your people are going to start being nice to you. I don't mean that. I mean, you get so. One of the things is, in the mindful coaching method, I teach is like, your problems don't go away. You just get bigger,
Yeah.
and you get so kind of connected to what you might call your eternal being that even the notion of your life becomes small.
Right. I wanted to, for the listener to understand, can you explain a little bit of what somatic psychology is, please?
Yeah, somatic psychology and somatic coaching and all of that means turning to your felt experience, basically, and that's usually body based. But so, like at the beginning, when we did this meditation, and I said, turn to whatever's going on in your experience now. I'm inviting people to a somatic experience of like what's true in your body. Are you feeling energy, like you reported, oh, I get so nervous, right? So in a somatic way, we might go deeper into that, like how do you notice that nervousness? Oh, and it's like, oh, I feel agitated, I have all this energy, my skin is tingly. Those are somatic experiences. And the reason those are important is because they're the truth. They're not, there's no interpretation involved. There can be. The interpretation is, I'm having a tension in my shoulder because I'm always carrying the load for other people, or because this happened. When you go to the because, but we're not trying to do that. We're trying to just stop and say, I'm having a tension in my shoulder. Just notice that much. Don't make meaning out of it.
Right. Being
And just
present with
yep,
what's happening
just
now.
be present with what is, and then saying yes. Yep, that's a fact. I got it. Rather than go, well, this isn't fair.
Right.
Maybe it's not.
Right.
But if you go there, then you're inviting a whole nother energy into your system that isn't really that much fun. And you're creating it by going into your thoughts around how it's unjust. I'm not trying to say to avoid
Right.
injustice or to not do the right thing. This is about orienting into the experience that you have in a way where there's no unnecessary suffering.
Correct. Right. Because mindfulness stems from Buddhism, and Buddhism is about not suffering. Um, so that's really important to have that. I like that, the mindfulness and having the somatic aspect, because it really will bring you into the present. And I love that you described, the person who does dive into themselves is the emergent now, and it's so beautifully said. I really love
Thank you.
that. Um, Beautiful, because yes, when as you know, when you went past all these little gimmick divination tools, when you're in that full now, the bliss, because I think that's words can encapsulate what that feeling is like. Impossible, also words.
Yeah.
That bliss is the closest thing I can explain. Nothing is happening. There are no thoughts. There's just that full blown now. I don't, it's like even now I can never explain it to someone until you have
You can't.
experienced
It's
it.
impossible. Yeah.
You,
It's like trying to give somebody the experience of the Grand Canyon through words.
right,
You can't do
right,
it. There's no substitute for the experience. And if you haven't had the experience, then you don't know. And if you have the experience, then you do know.
yes,
And I'm not trying to diminish
no,
either
right,
way.
right,
I'm just saying that there's a knowing, and then there's an understanding,
yes,
and those are different. And they're different. One is a head idea, and one is
yes,
It's like if you've been in a hot tub. Enough people have been in a hot tub, they can relate to that. But until you've been in the hot tub,
right. You're not
you don't
gonna
know what it is.
Correct, exactly. So, I mean, I'm exploring this further to invite the listener to dive in and to the first step, which I love that you invited, like, you are not your thoughts. Like, that is such a beautiful curiosity to get in to yourself and know that that's not, your thoughts aren't you. And that's a very important truth. So that way you start excavating your actual truths within yourself, that not these thoughts are you. And even meditation, when the thoughts do fill in, it happens to all of us, even us
Yeah.
teachers and coaches, but we know that it's just passing clouds while we have our eyes closed, and to see them as separate from who we are in that space, and
Yeah.
saying thank you, but for now I'm looking to be whatever the goal of the meditation is for,
Right,
right? Because
right. You just keep coming back and coming back and coming back, and that's the practice. That's what
correct.
builds the muscle neurologically in the prefrontal cortex of the brain to cause you to have enough of executive function so that you can sit back and watch your experience and not be in
And
it.
not be in it, right? Be of the world and not in it. Exactly.
Exactly. So,
Yes, beautiful.
yeah,
And what I also admire about the somatic aspect is that it brings you back to a childlike state. Because if you think about how kids describe things, right? They're not like, "Oh, my shoulder hurts because I carry all everything for everybody."
yeah.
They're just like, "Ow, my shoulder hurts. I don't
Right.
know,
Exactly.
mommy, look at it," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's right.
and it'll help you connect to your inner child in that space to really.
That's a part of our inner world is this
Mhm.
experience we have as children, and the way that conditioning that way that conditioning preconditions our judgments and our experience and the way we see the world.
Right. Yeah.
That's very important to get in touch with, and it's very hard work to do.
Right. Definitely. And as you're exploring all these aspects of life and yourself, what made you say, "I'm going to stick with mindfulness"?
Hmm. I think the thing that is that kind of that's a really good question. I think because primarily it's a doorway. I kind of think of it as like a Trojan horse.
Mm-hmm.
You know what a Trojan, the story of the
Yes.
Trojan horse, right? It's kind of like, oh, mindfulness. I'm going to, in a way, it's a little sleight of hand, right? So it's kind of like,
Yes.
oh, look, you're going to get mindful. You're going to be calmer. You're going to have more resilience. You're going to get better solutions. You're going to sleep better. You're going to have a better immune system. You're going to be able to discern better, make better.
Yeah.
Look at all the stuff you get,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it's like, oh, I'm back in the material. Isn't that spiritual materialism in a way? Or am I just saying, oh, look at all the things I can have
Right.
if I do this work?
Right.
So it's kind of like the dark side in a way, and I don't mean that in a super
Right.
negative way,
Right.
but I mean, but
Right.
it's enough to get people interested because people have real suffering
Yes.
and they need real
They
solutions.
really do.
So it's like, I'm burned out. I am flipped out. I'm having a real hard time. Please give me something that I can materially hang on to help me out. And so they do these techniques and they do this process and lo and behold, it does help them calm down. It does help them in the thing that they were. So they actually get the benefits they were looking for. And then something magical happens. This light bulb goes off that is so much bigger of a realization than what they were asking for in the first place that they're radically changed for the rest of their life for the better.
Yes.
Because once you have this insight, you can't undo it.
No.
It's like having a puzzle. I talk about when I teach up this, I talk about once you see a puzzle, the answer to the puzzle, it's not a puzzle anymore.
Yeah.
And it'll never be a puzzle again.
Right. Exactly.
And so once you really get it, oh, I'm not my thoughts, and I see how that works, and I know how that works, and I know the truth of it, you'll never be the same.
No.
So you're not going to get anybody into a class by going, come and learn the truth about not being your thoughts.
No, no one's gonna join. Like, what is that?
But if you said, we're going to help you be less anxious and less reactive and get more done in your life, then it's like, oh, okay, sure, yeah, I want that. So that's kind of, my what's the word I want to say? My bait and switch technique, right?
Yes.
It's like you come in the door for some really tangible problem you have and leave with something much bigger than you expected.
Absolutely. I love that you called it like a Trojan horse because I call it the spiritual gateway drug, mindfulness.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It is, when we've both explored deeper than what just the mind, right? And so it is that door, that bodyguard, like at the beginning of your journey, like, hey, if you try to acknowledge that you're not your thoughts, even as just the first little candy that you eat, and then you go like, ooh, 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 and then you realize like, oh, I can make this candy. I don't need to go buy it. I can go make it. If anything, I could change the flavor. I can create this. I can do that. And now it's no longer, like you say, it's no longer the way you perceived it when you walked in, now it's enmeshed as a part of you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely is, and it's once that door opens, then so many other things start to happen. It's a dangerous door to open,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
but once that does happen, then
Yeah.
I mean dangerous in the sense that the you begin a process of peeling away effectively what you might call the ego at that point,
Right.
and it's a mighty opponent.
Mighty opponent, indeed. Indeed. So many trickeries, so many games, so much. Oh my gosh. I mean, there should be a class or a coach on that aspect to really like, because I feel like some people, not that they're not able to, but as you know, everyone's mind is built differently, and some people may be unable to push past that, because that is a true bodyguard of getting into your truest self. That
Yeah.
it's so used to being in charge that now you're telling it like, no, actually, I'm in charge. Thank you for everything, but and then it'll just try to do all these crazy things and
Yeah, yeah. It's like it doesn't want to be a part of the story. It wants to be the story,
correct.
and when you take the spotlight
Mhm.
off it like has a fit, and so
Totally.
it's very hard to do. And in the long run, it can actually be it's a we're making fun of it, but it's a really severe
Yes.
identity crisis
Mhm.
that some people call the dark night of the soul.
Right.
And once
Right.
you
Right.
what was it? You take the red pill, right?
Or take the
Or
red
once you
pill.
take that, yeah, then it's kind of like you can't go
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
so it's a big deal.
It's a
It's a
big
big
deal,
deal.
definitely, and it has its purpose, right? For when we're a child, when you're a teenager, like all the survivor that it does, and it helps us go through traumatic experiences. Um, I'm always talking about children, and what can we provide better? And I've said this before, like at 18, instead of choosing your college, it's time to come into healing from 0 to 18 and learning what the ego is, right? And how to use it as a tool as you become this adult, right? That would be the ideal situation, for our children, our future, to be in a better space for themselves. But that's a different topic.
Well, it is, and it would take quite an aware, culture to be able
Right,
to do that.
right.
But let's hold out hope for the future there.
Exactly. So, as now that we're here to see your beautiful emergence of the butterfly that you've become today, tell us a little bit
Hmm.
about what you do now and what your offerings is to the community.
Oh gosh, I'm kind of gone crazy this last year with too many irons in the fires.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll talk about like I'm herding cats, and people say, "Well, how come you don't service?" I said, "Because I love my cats." And
Right.
it's kind of like, so I have a private practice at Brett at themindfulcoach.com, where I help people one on one who need it. The interesting thing about my work is that people don't usually have more than 3 or 4 or 5 sessions because we try to go deep really fast, and people kind of get a lot to work
Mhm.
with, and so that's a ton of fun for me, and I enjoy that. My heart these days is with the Mindful Coach Association, and that I'm working on, which is at the Mindful Coach Association. It's mindfulcoachassociation.com. And it's for coaches and what I call helping professionals. And that's healers, psychic, readers, whatever you
Right.
do. If you do work with other
Right.
people and you value mindfulness in your work and in your life, then you can find a community of like-minded folk here. And we get together, and Claudia's there, and there's a bunch of amazing folk, and we get together and we chat about what's it like to be people who are called to help other people, and to try to do so consciously and to run businesses consciously. So I'm passionate about that these days because we need more conscious healers and
Yes.
workers and coaches in the world. And so I'm really trying to find a way to make that much bigger. It's growing and it's having good success, but I want it to be a really big success. So the Mindful Coach Association, And there's a podcast with that called The Mindful Coach, which people can find by just looking for the Mindful Coach podcast. And so those are the main things. And then there's the Mindful Coach method. So I have so many things. These are my cat. I'm giving my cat's names here, where I teach coaches and others how to be some of the techniques we've been talking about, how to do that in session with people. And so there's a part about being mindful and present as a coach or as a facilitator, and then there's a part about actually helping other people do somatic mindful work so that they can connect to this sense of who they really truly are that we've been talking about this whole time.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. You're doing beautiful work, and
Mm,
you
thank you.
created such a beautiful community in the Mindful Coach Association, which I'll have all the links up on YouTube and Spotify. And then I have the Mindful Coach Association at the bottom of my website. If you're interested,
Thank you.
yeah, it's on there already. And then you can go there and find, someone to help guide you into the space that you're looking for. That's what this is about. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
we have like over nine. We have like almost 100 coaches there
right?
and they're like
Wow.
some really really skillful folk. And so
Yes.
check it out. And if you don't know, if you're looking for a recommendation, just ping me and
Hmm.
I'll do a coach alignment session for
I love
you,
that.
and
Yeah.
we'll figure out who's good for you.
Yeah, I love that because you have talked to everyone and go through it's your baby, so you definitely are very aware of what's going on and who's there. And again, we talked about a lot of the people that are pretending, and we don't want that. We want true healing
Yeah.
and moving
Yeah,
forward, right?
this is the real deal. That's what the people come. They say this is the real deal, and this is all about authenticity
Yes,
and connection. There's not a big bunch of marketing that going. No one's out there going, and you can join my mastermind for only $10,000
right,
if you sign up today. It's not, just
right,
none of that going on.
right.
So
All the click funnels and all that stuff,
yeah,
which I've also steered away from because it didn't feel right. That wasn't how I envisioned helping others to scam them into watching videos that I pre-recorded. Like what? Um, so I never meet this person. I don't get to ask them questions live or learn about right intuition, learning about energy and even having the opposite effect. If say you do have someone you don't feel right about, right? You already bought this click funnel. You can't be like, I don't want to know more. It's just like, what?
yeah, right. Well, you have to do what you can to sort it out. There's a place for pre-recorded content, I
Right.
think, and there's a place for live. And by all means, everyone has to sort it out
Mhm.
for who they are and according to their own way of going about this stuff. But my calling here is just to invite all the authentic, conscious oriented healers and helpers in the world that want to gather and support each other. That's what the purpose of the association is. It's completely free to
And
join.
that's the other thing. You offer free to join, which is remarkable. Again, everyone's offering, yes, if you join for this amount of money
I
or a
know.
membership or gosh, I can't tell you how many. I'm sure you've come across enough yourself.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's 40, 30, 40, $50 a
Hmm.
month to join these things. And I'm not against making money by all means, but
Right.
I just feel like that this has to be a true community effort, and I don't want any barriers to entry,
Right.
because we need people. We need a large number of people because I'd like to have 1,000
Hmm.
coaches, and then I can go to these providers who are charging $10,000. Say, hey, look, I'm going to bring you 1,000
Right.
coaches. What kind of an offer can you bring to us
Uh-huh.
to our membership?
Right.
So I need big numbers to
Yeah.
cause those kinds of things, and also to go to the main players in the
Right.
world, invite the key speakers, the key people, the leaders
Yes.
to come and speak to us.
Yes.
But they're not going to come and speak to 20,
No.
but they'll come and speak to 1,000. Whoops,
Sorry, the ambulance is
that's
passing
a
by.
siren.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was trying to. It's okay. Everyone knows where I am in Los Angeles. There's gonna be sirens all
it's
the
crazy
time. What do
there.
you do? I don't. It doesn't bother me, especially being in this space. I'm like, yeah, it's a part of it. If I can mute it, great. If not, moving on.
Just a part of what is in your world.
Correct. Um, so I wanted to mention to the listeners out there that might be in the mindfulness aspect or in the healing aspect of any kind. Definitely check out the Mindful Coach Association and join. and join and see what's there, and how we can help you as a community as well, and be part of the meetings bi-weekly. They're just really heartfelt. I think they're
Mm.
just really just really. This morning was hard for me. I was like, I want to join this morning, but I'm so behind, and I want to be ready for this conversation. Because
Mm.
they'll be, in 2 weeks. But I also enjoyed. I wanted to tell you intuition one that we were doing. I'll just tell the listener quickly that it was just a small group, I know, but
Yeah.
we would come together and someone would pose a question, how they may be going through something or something they want insight on, and then we will all tap in intuitively and see what we gathered and to help the person with the question or curiosity that may have, and I thought that was truly beautiful.
That was a lot of fun, and I'm planning on doing that again. So if anyone's interested that's listening, they can either connect with you and you
Yes,
can send them to
yes,
me, or they connect with me, and
yes.
I'll put you on the list to be notified when we do it, because that's a group that is interested in just learning how to give what I call give voice to your intuition, so that you can learn how it works in you. So it's a study
Hmm.
group that's intended to be a place where people can
Yeah,
practice being intuitive without being judged by anybody.
exactly.
I don't know of anything like
No.
that out there, and it's a really amazing
Yes.
a bunch of bright lights that show up. I mean, some professional intuitives. I could have gone that way, and a bunch of others, and it's really a ton of
It
fun.
is a ton of fun. I love it. It's really such a great exercise. So again, for anyone listening, if anything that Brett said today, contact him. If you can't find him, find me. But Brett, before I let you go today, I wanted to give you space to see if there's anything that you think the listener might need to know today.
Hmm. Let me just check in intuitively
Mhm.
here and see if there's something lighting up. Um, what's coming up for me is unexpected, and so I tend to honor the things that are unexpected, and that's it. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Most of all, be patient. It takes time for things to transform, but everything transforms. Everything transforms. It's the nature of the planet. Even as Eckhart Tolle did this whole beautiful talk, even the sun will die,
Right.
right? Every, everything will eventually go. And so whatever circumstances you're in or whatever you're working on, give it some time, let it grow in its own way. Sometimes I say it like this: you, once you put the ingredients of the cake together, turning up the heat doesn't bake it
Right.
faster.
Right.
It takes its own time in its own way. So align with the natural rhythm of whatever process you're going through, and you'll find your life is a lot less
Yeah,
stressful.
that's beautifully said. In a world that is craving dopamine hit after dopamine hit,
No kidding. Yeah,
and
exactly.
patience is it's kind of like trending out, or not being spoken of, and just creating more suffering, right? And so
It absolutely
thank you
does.
for bringing that
Yeah.
up. That's truly a great message for everyone listening. Patience. Oh my gosh, Brett, where can people find you?
Well, the easiest way is Brett at Brett. Well, excuse me. The easiest way is at themindfulcoach.com, themindfulcoach.com. So you can just go there. There's my newsletter and my email address, Brett at themindfulcoach.com. I'm happy to chat with anyone about what it is that they're after, if anything I can do to help. My mission is to serve and to help people become who they are. And let me know how I can do that, and I will try.
Believe him, because he is a very generous soul coming from you. Yes, believe him. You reach out for anything you need, he will help you. Brett, I cannot thank you enough for your light and your energy to share with me and expand on this beautiful conversation. I am beyond grateful.
Well, it's a privilege to work with you and to know you and to be a part of your own emergence and the voice that you're putting into the world. So thank you for that as
Thank you,
well.
brother. I appreciate that so much. And thank you to all the listeners for tuning in and expanding this space with us as well. Remember that the breath is the secret and always lead with love. Thank you. Until next time.